Hey class, welcome to Module 2. That's going to cover weeks 3, 4, and 5. This week we are going to look at some more of the historical background to the evolution of the Mexican people as we move toward the independence of the Mexican people and the stark defining lines that will separate the United States from Mexico. But here we are in Module 2 covering the period from 1521 to 1848. And so as we begin week 3, we're going to look at some historical documentary, one in particular that was done by PBS, and it's about Latinos in general, but of course that covers the history of Mexico as well, so it works well for our purposes. And the focus of that documentary that we cover here in week 3 of Module 2, they're looking at the years 1565 to 1880. And all of these years have very significant meaning for the history of Mexico and the United States and the challenges, conflicts, and deciding elements that pertain to the rule by Spain in the Viceroyalty of New Spain, which was in Mexico. So 1523, the royal officials from Spain, they come to what Cortez has conquered, and they begin to rule. 1531, we have the introduction of the Virgin of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and we'll talk more about that later in the class, but that's an important year to remember. That in 1535, the region gains the official title of the Viceroyalty under the name New Spain. And then in 1565, we have St. Augustine, which was the first European settlement of the United States, a Spanish-speaking settlement in Florida. So, since our documentary that we're going to watch in week 3 covers a different time period than kind of the scope of our entire module, the module is from 1521 to 1848, and then the documentary is 1565 to 1880. I'll give you a little bit of timeline between 1565 and 1846, which is important as well. So in 1598, New Mexico is settled by the Spanish, making it the largest and oldest Spanish settlement in the Southwest. Moving into the 1600s, 1691, Texas is made separate, a separate Spanish province with Don Domingo de Terán as its governor. And then in 1692, we've got explorations by Diego de Vargas, who moves into the Guadalupe Mountains and is the first European to do so. 1718, here in Texas, we would know this, the mission at San Antonio is founded, and it becomes one of the most prosperous and most important missions. In 1776, important year for the U.S., right, as we're gaining our independence from Great Britain, but the Spanish are also celebrating the founding of San Francisco in the West, and that was 1776. So 1821, the first English settlers arrive in the Mexican state of Texas, and that's an important point of interaction with Mexico. And then the government of the Republic of Mexico challenges the power of the Catholic Church in 1833 and orders the missions to be secularized and land holdings to be broken up. Antonio Lopez Santa Anna is named the president of Mexico. That's 1833. And then the following year, the president, Santa Anna, dissolves the Congress to rule all Mexico with an iron hand. Texans and Tejanos unite. In opposition, we have revolution. And then 1835, the Texans and Tejanos rise in rebellion against the oppressive Mexican government. And then 1836, on February 23rd, Antonio Lopez Santa Anna takes possession of San Antonio. On March 6, day 13 of the siege, Santa Anna's forces breach the Alamo defenses. All the defenders of the Alamo, 189 men to be exact, were killed. Then we have the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836. 1845, Texas is officially annexed to the United States, which angers the Mexican government. Conflict over the official border line arises, and then 1846, the Mexican-American War begins. So, as you know, as you can see, there's a tumultuous back and forth battle over land and identity and culture, but all of this is important for our study of the Mexican-American fine arts, because in order to understand, like I've said before, where the Mexican-American identity comes from, we have to understand where the Mexican identity came from. In order to do that, we have to understand its pre-Columbian roots, we have to understand the Spanish influence on the culture, and we also have to understand the tension between the Anglos in the north, and the establishing of, imaginary lines as it were, but borders that define where the U.S. begins and ends, and Mexico begins and ends. So, getting this historical backdrop is important. So this, in week 3 of the module, you will watch this documentary, Foreigners in Their Own Land, and it'll cover a lot of the information that we've kind of just breezed through. It'll cover it in more detail, and it's dramatized, so you'll get to see some action to go along with the history. It makes it kind of interesting. And that's what we do in week 3, but then in week 4 of module 2, we're going to focus in specifically on La Virgen de Guadalupe, Our Lady. We're going to look at the text, the original text, the source text that we have for this story about an Indian named Juan Diego, who was converted to Catholicism, and he has a visitation by Mother Mary, as it were, and has a miraculous appearance take place, and then the image of the Virgin is embedded into his tilma, his cloak, and to this day, if you visit the basilica, you can see that alleged tilma with the image imprinted into it, which was said to have taken place miraculously. Scholars, of course, do not think so. They're rather sure that someone made it. And also there's a little bit of discrepancy concerning the accuracy or the historical reliability of this Nikan Mopahua, which is the source text for the story, when it was written. But nonetheless, this image of the Virgin of Guadalupe is a very important image, both artistically, culturally, and religiously. There's so many aspects of this image that are important, not only for the Mexican people, but also for Mexican Americans, as this is a very popular symbol that is painted and sculpted and tattooed and everything else, and placed in large stickers on the back of one's windshield. Veneration and adoration for La Virgen de Guadalupe is very important in a fine arts perspective. And so we're going to read the text. We're going to read a historical scholarly article that is going to address some of the criticism and address some of the meaning and the historicity of the image and the story itself, but really getting at the artistic representation and the power of the symbol more than anything else. And then you will complete a discussion 2.2 based on this text as well, and the image, and you're going to watch a film. There's a short film, it's about 30 minutes long, and it tells the story of Juan Diego and the apparition of Mary that he sees, and his interaction with the Archbishop. And it's really a good film. I mean, there's several renderings of the story, but this one's pretty good. I mean, it's old. You'll see. But it's a good one. I think it tells the story quite faithfully to the original text. So, and then I don't know if I guess I failed to mention, but in week 3 of this module, you'll also have discussion 2.1, where you'll discuss the California Gold Rush, and that's an important event that happens in California during the rise of the United States and the West, and the settlers moving there, and then the gold rush. Anyway, so I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So in this module, you will do 3 discussions, 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. So that brings me to week 5, which is specifically going to be about a film called La Otra Conquista, which means the other conquest. And that film is really one of my favorite films. It addresses the arrival of the Spanish, overthrowing and conquering the Aztec, and it centers around this one particular man. His name is Topiltzin, and he is thought to be, in the story, he is an illegitimate son of Moctezuma, and the friar bringing Christianity has this encounter with Topiltzin, which I think later he changed his name to Tomas, and he kind of fakes his conversion, but he's forced to convert under the edge of the sword, so to speak, and he's beaten, and it's really a treacherous film. I mean, I'll be honest, it's pretty violent, pretty gruesome. So, but it gets at a conversation that I think we need to have concerning the evangelization of the New World, and the colonization and the violence and everything that goes with that messy, forced conversion that was brought to the New World. But what it gets at is what we call syncretism, and this also plays off week 4, because week 4 we look at La Virgen de Guadalupe, who was literally introduced as a goddess to sort of supplant and overthrow the current goddesses of the day. And it worked. Actually, it was pretty successful. So while people saw, this idea of Jesus, a man, often European looking, white, coming along and representing these foreign, European conquerors, that message didn't really work very well for the people. And the Spanish, the Catholics, they picked up on this, and they introduced something that was relatable, and introducing the story of La Virgen de Guadalupe in the native tongue, her being brown skinned in the image. All of these things worked to introduce Catholicism at the time. So we're going to talk about that in discussion 2.3. You'll watch the film for week 5, and there is a scholarly film review that you will address, you'll read as well. And also in week 5 of this module, you're going to begin reading a collection of short stories. It's a novela. It's some short stories, some kind of fractured stories that aren't even complete, but it's a novel or novela by Sandra Cisneros, and it's called The House on Mango Street. And so we're going to kind of read that starting in this module in the end of week 5, and you'll read it, continually for the next few weeks, and then you'll write a book review. The whole book, I think, is maybe 110 pages long. It's not even very long. And I've also included the audio. So if you want to listen to somebody read it rather than read it, you are more than welcome to do that, as long as you get a full grasp and understanding of the text. But it is a part of the literary art that we're going to consider in our analysis of fine arts in this class, so it's important. Then at the end of Module 2, you will have some deliverables. You have a Module 2 quiz, and you have summary analysis number 2, which is going to be over the scholarly article from week 4, The Virgin of Guadalupe, Symbol of Conquest or Liberation, by Jeanette Favreau-Peterson. And then you'll have a 600-word film analysis of the film La Otra Conquista. So, this is a good module. I think they're all good, but this one I like because it covers some of my favorite topics, specifically stuff about La Virgen de Guadalupe, and the La Otra Conquista film is really good. I mean, and I'll warn you now, there's some human sacrifice. Like I said, it has some gruesome moments, but it's addressing a topic, giving a new perspective on the history of some events that's needed, and it's done well, and it represents the culture well, and so it's better than Mel Gibson's Apocalypto for sure. So that brings this introduction to Module 2 to a close. If you have questions, you know how to reach me, contact me, let me know. If ever at any time there's a video or an article or something, if it's not loading properly, or if it's on YouTube and it got taken down, this happens, let me know, and I can make sure you get a copy of whatever it is that you need. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you online.